What's up, everybody? Welcome out to this newest episode of the Game Time Guru Book Reviews. I am Shane Larson, host of the Game Time Guru podcast, which is a podcast that is designed to deliver a panoramic view on sports and help you see sports through a different lens. It's perfect for any coaches, parents, athletes, anybody who has a passion for sports, or even those who don't. Pay attention to my podcast. Go subscribe to it so you guys can learn more about sports and see them through a different lens. Part of my show is I do these little book reviews. It's kind of a new little segment that I do. You can find this obviously on the live feed, but if you want to watch the replay, you can also go into the members area that I created with my website, thegametimeguru.com. Now, while the website is currently, at the time of this recording, still being built, you can still access it if you go to thegametimeguru.com. And at the top, there's going to be a section that says podcast. I would encourage you just to click on the podcast link, sign up for the members area. It's totally free. Get all the content, the articles, the podcasts, bonus episodes, the mini-series, and you'll have access to these book reviews as well. So check those out when you get an opportunity. Go to thegametimeguru.com and sign up to get into the account, and you can find some good sports content. We're going to be adding to that as we go. It is free at this point, so make sure to go and check that out. Guys, the next book review that I'm doing tonight is awesome. It's very special. It's from Work on Your Game. Use the pro athlete mindset to dominate your game in business, sports, and life. This is by Dre Baldwin. Now, Dre was a guest on my show, and I encourage you to listen to that podcast episode and then buy this book and read it. The reason I encourage you to listen to that episode first is because simply Dre has a very unique and inspiring story on how he became a professional basketball player, which he played 9 years in professional basketball. It was not your average story, right? It wasn't like, oh, I just went to college, made pro, went that way. No, so he had a unique story from the time he went to high school to the time he went to college, and then how he even made it into a professional contract. So check out his story, because then once you listen to his story and then you read this book, obviously he covers some of that stuff in this book, but I would encourage you to check that out first, and then you'll have a little bit more understanding of why he's saying what he's saying in this book. This book is absolutely incredible. Speaks to me. It really does. The book was just like, it was like he was just talking to me. I love when I consume content, and that's what actually happens, is like it speaks to me. I think it's phenomenal when you can do that. You can draw the emotions of the individual. The reason it spoke to me is because there's so many parallels between sports, business, and life. And that's exactly what he grabbed out of here. You know what I mean? Like, we're talking about, I took so many notes, and I'm going to kind of go over a few things of why I like this book. Like, what I really loved about it is just the sports parallels with life and business. There's a lot of things that you can apply. You don't have to be a sports fan to enjoy this book. Okay. You really don't. You really don't. You don't have to be a sports fan to enjoy this book. There's so many things that you can learn from it. All the way right from the beginning in chapter number 1, when he's talking about your trumpet of victory, creating a signal for your trumpet of victory. And he uses what he went through in his routine for, when he'd have basketball games. What was his signal? He helps you. It's one of those books where you can kind of like write out plans and kind of follow along in finding your signal. You know what I mean? So I worked on that myself. And then also eliminating negative trumpets. What I liked about this is this book kind of built on the last book that I read, talking about negativity and how negativity wins 100% of the time. And this one, he talks about eliminating negative trumpets, like quitting, second guessing, laziness, feeling sorry for yourself, playing the victim card. Don't let those negative trumpets get into your system, right? Goodness, there's so many amazing things. One of the chapters I really, really liked was talking about confidence, how to build confidence. I think what we see a lot in sports and business and life is the lack of confidence, right? We see a lot of talent, but a lack of confidence. And that is one of the things that I absolutely loved about this book, is that Dre kind of gives his outline of how to build that confidence and maximize that confidence. Not just build it, but maximize it. A lot of people deal with performance anxiety, and that's in regards to sports. I'm one of them. That's why I said this speaks to me. There were times where I felt like I was super skilled. I could shoot a basketball, arguably. I mean, it's just the reality of it is my senior year in high school, I led our conference in 3-point percentage. Not saying I was the best shooter in the world, but I did have the best percentage shooting wise. You had to have a minimum, I think, of 50 shots, if I'm not mistaken. And I shot, 47% from the 3-point line my senior year. And that was cool. But like, I had that confidence in shooting, but like there was a lot of I'd get performance anxiety. Like, and I still, to this day, there were times where like I have this skill set and I feel like I'm confident, but when it comes time to like actually get out there and do my job, it feels like I'm a completely different person. And how many of us have actually met people like that who are super good at what they do? They're just super, super talented, but for some reason they just can't, they can't, when the spotlight's on, they buckle, right? And he talks about performance anxiety and utilizing, like, just trying to utilize the different things to get away from that, right? He talks about excitement versus self-consciousness. And he's talking about like, it's okay when people talk about you, right? That's another thing. And then he also has a pre-performance checklist that I wrote my own stuff down on. So here's the thing, man. I just really like the fact that he talks about confidence and then performance anxiety in back-to-back chapters, because he goes through these like different things that I can relate to in the sports world and in the business world. There's so many things that I can relate to here. One of the things I got to find here, he talks about mental toughness. Now, that's a big thing I've been focused on in the last year of my life, is mental toughness. And one of the things I really liked was how he talks about, when you have a setback, how do you get ready for a comeback, right? And it goes along with that whole phrase of don't, you need to turn those periods at the end of the sentence into commas. Yeah, don't, like, some people get down on themselves when something doesn't go their way, so they're like, oh, that didn't work, so they put a period at the end of it and they try to start a new sentence. In reality, you shouldn't be putting periods there. You should be putting a comma. The story continues on. You just got to find a way to adjust. I really, really, really enjoyed some of the examples that he put in here. Lil Wayne, 2005 to 2007, he was everywhere. You saw him and you either loved him or you hated him, right? So he was talking about being relentless and selling yourself and marketing yourself and being out there and not being scared to be out there. Like, if you guys recall, Lil Wayne really did indeed get his voice out there for everyone to hear. You either loved him or you hated him, but Lil Wayne was out there, right? Because he figured out a way to do it. He put out a ton of content and he had his face out there so that people could see him. Whether you liked him or not, you could see him. Another piece of advice he gave is plan A versus everything else. You know what? He said plan Bs are for losers. Your plan A versus everything else. And he kind of gives the whole, he kind of shifts your mindset versus, like, instead of having a plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G, he kind of shifts your mindset on that whole concept so that you're still focused on your plan A. Okay. So that was something I thought was really, really cool too, that he talks about in here. It's for a full chapter. I would encourage you guys to take a look at it. Listen, I love how he says, defend your name if necessary, right? And he gives some examples there. Like, don't ever let somebody disrespect your name. Like, when you're out there, you compete against yourself, but don't compare yourself to what you should be, right? Should needs to be removed from your vocabulary. And he talks about, like, you can be doing well and people don't necessarily have to like you, but as soon as someone disrespects your name, you need to defend your name if necessary. Your name is what you own, right? Treat your name with respect and others will follow suit. So that's another thing, like having that mental toughness and understanding how to sell yourself to other people. Treat your name with respect. If somebody's bad-mouthing your name, respect your name, like defend it. And you know what's another interesting point that he made in this book, guys? I could go on and on about this book, but another golden nugget. He says, don't let anybody who's ever given up on their plan A give you advice on what to do with yours. How often in life do we see that, right? People telling you, oh, reality needs to set in. You're never going to play college ball. Or, hey, you're not going to be an entrepreneur, so stop trying. Or you need to go get a big boy job. Or, well, you probably should finish school and get a degree and go do this. And people start, like, telling you what you should do. Yeah, you should go to school and get a job. Or you should go do this instead. Or you should get married. Or you should do this. You should buy a house. You should buy a car. Everyone's trying to give you advice on what to do. And sometimes you'll see that your plan A isn't their plan A. So they start to kind of like try to pull you down. And he said, don't ever let somebody who gave up on their plan A give you advice on what to do with yours. And so that really sat with me quite a bit. What I really, really liked about one of the final chapters of this book, guys, chapter 11 of Work on Your Game, was the bad mental errors that people make. Replaying bad movies, being too smart for the basics, hustling backwards, struggling for mediocrity where you don't belong, focusing on doing and not being, overthinking your performance, putting up invisible barriers, giving time and attention to fear, placing niceness over importance, which was a super interesting point that he made there. All of these, obviously, he expands upon these in chapter 11. I'm just reading what they are. Disrespecting your success, whining, and then the best one of all that I'll end with is being a pig. Some of you guys who caught my Facebook Live a few weeks ago or a few days ago at this point, professional information gatherer. Don't be a pig. It's a bad mental mistake people have, and I've seen it myself. I started doing some reflection. People just consume so much content, and they want so much information, but they don't do anything with it. They gather so much information, then what do they do with it? Nothing. They drown in it because they don't know what to do with it. So, like, don't be a pig, a professional information gatherer. Again, guys, those mental errors that people make, every one of those things that he says, like, when people place niceness over being important, people would say, like, I don't know if I agree with that just by hearing it. If you read what he says about that, it'll make much more sense. And it just sat with me. I'm like, wow, this is so good. Like, every one of these things is just super, super good. And again, if you watch or you listen to our interview together on our podcast with Dre Baldwin, I believe it was episode 129. If you go back and listen to that and then read this book, you'll have more understanding of, like, where he was coming from and how, like, why you should be listening to what he's got to say. Some people would say, oh, well, anybody can just talk about this. No. Dre has a background where he's allowed to talk about this, and, like, because he's got that experience. He's got the experience, and sometimes we want to learn from those who have been there. And he's got the experience on how he made it to that next level and what he did to get there. It wasn't easy pickings for him. Like, I'm telling you, he's got some knowledge. So I would encourage you guys to read this book. Again, I'll show you it. Work on Your Game by Dre Baldwin. Use the pro athlete mindset to dominate your game in business, sports, and life. Dre's a stud. He's written a lot of books. He's been on some TED Talks. DreAllDay.com. He's a stud. Like, I absolutely love him. I connected with him in Nashville, Tennessee. He's a ClickFunnels member, at least a part of the ClickFunnels community. And that's how I kind of got in connection with him. And then I just resonated with his story a lot. Not that I was a professional athlete, but I love sports so much that I just kind of, like, followed his journey and had him on my show. Some of my thoughts that I wrote down at the end of this book. Reading this book has changed my perspective on life. It truly spoke to me. With the sports parallels to life, I was able to relate very well. I do not want others telling me what to do if they themselves have not done it. I need to be careful about who I take advice from. Just a couple of mental notes. I won't read you all my notes that I had put down at the very end of this book, but guys, this book was incredible. If you're looking for a good way to kind of become motivated and find some, practical things to implement into your life that can help you work on your game. It's not just telling you what to do. He's telling you specifics of what to do, and what you can implement and why you should implement them. You should check this book out. Again, Work on Your Game by Dre Baldwin. This is what it looks like. At all of my books that I read, if I've had that guest on my show, or if that author has been on my show, I write a little something here about, like, hey, Dre joined me for the Game Time Guru podcast when it aired on my show and stuff like that. That's kind of a memory that I'll have. So if I pass these books down to anyone, if at any point both my sons get it, and they want to read it, they'll at least remember that, Dad had Dre on the show. And it's also a nice mental note for me, because years down the road, I can actually say, hey, I interviewed that guy. I interviewed the author of that book. And so I kind of write notes in there too. So again, guys, Work on Your Game by Dre Baldwin. Loved it. I've already been applying a lot of the things that I read into my life, and it's helped me in a positive way. Check it out. Hope you enjoyed this book review, and I'll talk to you guys next time.